Brian, can you believe we bought a $2.3 million hotel with none of our own money?
Yeah, and we renovated it with $2 million of other people's money. So I think we got to start with how we actually found this deal, because where we are today, owning a boutique hotel in Philadelphia amongst a lot of other real estate assets, is really indicative of how we do all of our business. And that's been a friendship over 15 years.
Yep.
And generally the business ideas start with a text message. And I think, if I recall, this one started with me texting you a couple years ago about a deal that I found in Philadelphia.
But why were you even looking for a hotel?
So the reason why this hotel was on my radar was because at the time I had just opened up the Rex Hotel, which is our boutique hotel in the mountains. And it was doing well. Like, it was a COVID project, moved there in 2020, renovated an old motel into a hotel. And it was a real transformational point in my career where I was really realizing that the industry that we were both in, that we had built a career in for a dozen years in the apparel industry, building United by Blue, was just like an unhealthy industry, unhealthy business. And to be honest, it was shocking to me to run a hotel and make money. Like, it was actually a weird thought process that I was running a business and making money. After so many years of, we raised $18 million, we were doing tens of millions of dollars in sales, but we weren't actually making money. And everybody knows that business is about making money. So, and it shouldn't be surprising that, like, it should make money, but it was to me. And that's why I was looking, because I was like, man, if a hotel can make money, we should do one in Philadelphia. But I was also still interested in other things that were out in the mountains. And so I was playing between the idea of doing a campground or doing a hotel in the city. And that's why I found the Society Hotel on LoopNet, and I texted you that listing.
Yeah. And when you sent it to me, were you serious? Was it an idea? Because we text each other, I mean,
yeah,
dozens of times a day with tons of asinine business ideas, concepts, and a lot of them that have never materialized, many that have. Mm-hmm. But was this a serious one, or was this just like this is cool?
That's a great question. And I feel like it was definitely not a serious message. It wasn't
a message at all. You sent me just a link.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it was just like more of like a heads up, like, this is cool. Like, I actually said, I think I'm going to go see this.
Okay.
Because I had some time to kill, and I was like, I'm going to go check this out. And I think you were the one that actually made me a lot more interested and excited about it, because you texted me back. You're like, no shit, this is the hotel. This is the building that I've always wanted. And it's because it was in the same part of the city that we've been working in for all those years.
Yeah, and I was living in that neighborhood at the time. So, we used to, or actually, I wasn't living in the neighborhood at the time, but that's what I had moved out of the city. And at that point, when this was all transpiring, it was just months after United by Blue had transacted.
Right.
And I was no longer at United by Blue. So we had spent all of our 20s sitting this close together at United by Blue. And then all of a sudden, our text messages and our phone calls were a lot different because we weren't building a business together. At that moment, we actually weren't doing anything together.
I think that's actually a really important part of the story for everybody to know, is like, our friendship and our business partnership was sort of in like this like weird phase where you were still, did you have your corporate streak there? Were you you weren't corporate anymore. You had your we
were doing FairRx then.
Yes. Yeah. So FairRx had already come about.
Yep.
And then I was going all in.
It's like the infancy of that starting.
Exactly. And so we were working together quasi on that, but then not really working together as much as we had for most of our adult life. And so I think we were excited about the potential of that, and we went to go see it. I think it was September of 2022. We went to go see this building, and it was a rundown, burnt out wreck. I mean, if you remember this building, the bottom floor was called the Monkey Bar, and it hadn't been operational since COVID shut it down. And then in 2022, summer of 2022, it had a fire. No, 2021 maybe, one of those years, whatever. It had a fire, and that shut down the hotel portion. And so the hotel portion was pretty much gutted, and then the restaurant had to be a gut anyways. There wasn't much worth saving. But what was the purchase price again? Was it 2.3 or 2.4 was the list? I think it was 2.4 was list.
You know what? I actually think that we paid over ask, if I'm remembering correctly. And the reason we paid over ask was to get what we needed, which was seller financing, because we were looking at buying a $2+ million hotel that we knew needed $2+ million of work to get it operational again, and we didn't have any cash.
Right.
And we didn't have a bank lined up that was ready to loan us money. So the seller financing was the tipping point of the initial tipping point of making this deal happen. And I think that going into this, we were trying to get it for $2 million. We were trying to get it lower. And then we realized that, hey, if we can play our cards right and we're able to convince the seller that there's more upside for him, then let's quote unquote overpay for it in the initial ask.
Right.
And get the terms that we wanted and needed to make the deal happen. So I actually think that, I don't know that.
Might have been listed for 2.2.
That's exactly.
And then we paid 2.3.
Yep.
But we paid 2.3 without a dollar out of our own pockets.
Yep.
And both of us, again, the context for this timing in 2022 is both of us were working full time, highly invested in these other areas of our businesses. With me in the mountain, I literally just bought or was about to buy the campground, which was going to turn into Ferncrest, the glam ground. And so that I had also seller financed. We went back to back seller financing deals, which is crazy, which is, I think, a big lesson that we'll dive into with this podcast, maybe in general, is like all the creative financing stuff that is out there that so many people think that you can't do things because you don't have money. And I think we are consistently one time after another, not that like,
and it's not just about real estate either. I mean, we've run businesses and are running businesses in several different industries. And I think that finance is always a sticking point or a stopping point for a lot of people.
It is.
They think that if I don't have money or I don't feel like I have access to money, then I can't build something new. And that's almost never the case. At least that's what we found. If you have a product, a service, an offering that works, and if you can model it on paper, and if you are willing to put the work in, the money will find you. You can find the money, because there's a lot of people that have money that passively want to.
They don't want to do the work.
No.
And they love people like us because we're like willing to do the work and willing to put ourselves out there. And,
yeah.
And that is a huge thing.
But I think going back to what you were talking about with the timing of all this, I mean, between the two of us, we have 7 kids. And now, at that time, 6.
Maybe, 6, because I had 3 and you had 3.
Yeah. And so the idea of doing another project together, we're both, again, independently running businesses that are really in startup mode at the time.
Yep.
You had just had Rad. I had just had Mac.
Yep.
And what were we thinking? And what made you actually say yes? Because initially you were a little hesitant once we got to the moment of
we got the seller finance.
Time.
We got the seller to say he would finance it. We had that coffee. So I mean, and I think this is, again, these are good things for people to learn from, because seller financing doesn't happen because you just like throw out a term sheet. It's it's building a relationship. It's like convincing a seller that we had some credible history in renovation. Like we had done United by Blue stores in Philadelphia. We had that pedigree when it came to our reputation. Even though United by Blue turned out to not be a wildly successful company in the long run, in the Philadelphia scene, there was definitely like a sense that like it was a notable brand.
Yeah, and I think that it was very successful. It wasn't a successful, like it wasn't the exit that we dreamed of. But when you think about the impact that United by Blue had, and you think about like what we built, the product that we developed, the spaces that we developed, It was successful by a lot of metrics, not by others. But at the end of the day, I agree with what you're saying. I also think that getting that meeting, though, with the seller, it wasn't as easy as just finding the seller and getting a coffee with him. I think that that's another piece of this process that is often looked over, is that how do you even get a seller to come to the table to talk to you about a seller financing deal? We didn't just approach him and say, hey, do you want to do seller financing? We put an LOI together with no plan and no money of how we were going to actually make this work, and sent him an LOI and said, hey, we're willing to buy this for $2 million is what our initial offer was.
Right.
And that was an all cash offer of $2 million, of which we had
I forgot about that. We did. We made an all cash $2 million offer.
And the concept behind it was we'll find the money, and or he's not going to agree to this $2 million offer, but it will get him to meet us because it's a real offer signed by us.
Yeah.
And
I forgot about
that.
That's
exactly what got him to sit down with us in the first place, was that we come out of the blue, we walk this place one time, all right, how do we get the ball rolling? Because I think that's a lot of in business, a lot of times, is you just need to find a way to build some early momentum. And
God, we are so lucky he did not accept that offer.
Oh yeah, we would have been screwed. We would have been royally.
I mean, we probably could have raised the money, but it would have put a lot of pressure on the situation. But then what I remember now that you're recalling this story is we got him to come to our turf, which was at the time United by Blue. We were still I was still quasi involved with United by Blue. The transaction had happened. We didn't have an ownership stake in the brand anymore, but the store in Old City, a few blocks from where the hotel is, was still open and operational. So we got him there. He was seeing the store. Then we talked through the deal. Offering him $2 million, like you said, was enough to get him to the table, but it wasn't enough for him to immediately accept it. He wanted to negotiate. So then that's how we gave him more money, the 2.3, if he would do the seller financing. And he gets to make a lot of money throughout that process because he's making interest. So it actually is a really good deal for him to do. Because who needs... If you sell something for $2 million cash, he has to find a way to make money off of that. But now he sold it for the $2.3 million, and the note is making him all this income or all this interest.
And that's the other thing that's so interesting about seller financing in real estate too, that for the seller, it's really beneficial, because if he were to take the $2 million sale in the first place, he would all of a sudden have capital gains tax associated with the sale of that asset.
But doesn't he still have that?
It's at least strung out now over the next couple of years. We are making payments.
I see.
To him over the time. Yes, when we make, the way we structured it is that there's a balloon payment,
which most seller financing deals
which a lot of seller financing deals have. But if he was willing to extend the note that he wrote us even further, then and treat it like a traditional mortgage, he could receive all of that money over the course of the next 10, 15 years if he wanted to structure a 15-year deal.
Right.
And we could pay off the property to him with him being the bank, and there would be no single capital gains transaction happening for him. So, but in this case, though, there's still benefit to him because he's going to make a few $100,000 in interest while
which is like his cash flow income now. He's just making interest off of the property. He gets to be involved with it or feel like he's involved with it. And it's a win-win because we didn't have to go to a bank to get a loan for a burned out building that with very little other like collaterals. Like we could put our other real estate towards it, but you know, we weren't looking to actually guarantee any of this debt. Like we got this deal done by not having to do that, which is the win. But let's go back really quickly to finish up the story of how we got actually everybody to agree to it, which was we got the seller to agree to the financing, and then we knew that we still had to raise money though for the renovation because him financing the actual acquisition of the building was not going to be enough to actually renovate the building. So the building we thought was going to need $1 million. Turns out it needed more. And then we had to raise the capital for that. And I wasn't feeling it because I was just about to close on the campground, buying Wilson Campground, which was the conversion to Ferncrest, and I had a TV show in the works with Magnolia Network. Right. So I had like literally filming days. I was like in the mountains filming a few days. I had the crew in the city, and then we have this like hotel deal, and it's like totally misaligned, and it didn't really make too much sense at that time. And I was starting to feel the pressure because I felt like raising that additional $1 million was going to be the real effort that had to go into it now that we had the seller financing. So I basically more or less said, I don't think I can do this.
Yeah, I remember the phone call because it was at that point where we had inked the LOI, we had agreed on terms, we convinced him. It wasn't 100% seller finance. We needed 10% down as well, and that was coming due rather soon. We were on the clock at this point. We had to figure out, are we going to find a way to get out of this, or are we going to actually sit down and find a way to raise the money? And you were probably for the right reasons skeptical about it, but then we had some relationships, and I think that's one of the threads throughout all of this is that relationships has gotten us to where we're at in a property like this, but then in a lot of the other businesses that we've done as well. And this was an area where we had strong relationships. That's where, we bring our GC in, and our GC ends up being the guy that had connections to friends, family, as well as a hedge fund even that were looking to deploy capital, were from the area, and believed in us enough to take a flyer on this. And once we saw that there was an opportunity there was a real path to getting this capital together, I think I was able to convince you that this is worth taking a swing.
I mean, that almost makes it feel like there was like more strategy to it. Let's be honest. Like you got a phone call, a random phone call as you were driving a truck full of ceramic mugs, which is a whole nother story. And it was a catch-up call with somebody who had done some work for our office for United by Blue. Mm-hmm. And basically it led to a conversation about what you were working on. And he's like, oh yeah, I think I can get you money for that.
Yeah, it was one of those, again though, it was a relationship.
It was a relationship.
Random phone call.
And based upon our history of United by Blue, which again, I want to use the word failure lightly, but that failure is really like on paper, that financial failure is actually a massive success because of all the opportunities that it's led to, which is where we are today. Everything, like every single thing in my life has precipitated because of the experience and the connections from early career. I mean, it's logical, but I don't think people really put that together all the time. That linear career path, which seems like it's all over the place, is actually it's a web, and that's what happened. You got that phone call, and it changed everything.
It did, yeah, because it had nothing to do with the hotel.
Right.
I hadn't talked to the guy in 6 months, but we had a relationship. I knew he'd flipped some houses and was doing some of his own real estate stuff, and I was just genuinely curious, what had he been doing, because we had just got through COVID. I knew there wasn't a ton of action going on in the real estate world, specifically in Philly at the moment.
Commercial mostly, right?
Yeah, exactly, which was really hurting. And so I asked, what's next? Are you doing anything on the side? Like, I knew he had a bunch of side projects. Like, what's on the side next? He's like, you know what? I'm having a hard time finding the next project, but I have these investors that are really interested in getting behind me for a new project. I just got to figure out what it is. And then I'm thinking to myself, man, we already at that point had the LOI.
We had the seller financing locked down.
And the seller financing locked in. And we were at that kind of tipping point of, are we doing this or are we not doing this? I'm like, interesting. Because Brian and I have been looking at this hotel. We actually have an LOI in place. It's in Old City, 2 blocks from the Liberty Bell, and the everything that is anything in historic Philadelphia, it's footsteps from. There's a restaurant, there's a bar, and it's only $2 million. Do you think that you have enough capital that you could bring to the table to take down a deal like this? And would you want to GC it for us?" And that was the beginning of what then became a partner and the resource to help bring in the rest of the capital for the project.
Right. So this random phone call led to $1.5 million in the renovation financing, more than $1.5 million. Mm-hmm. We ended up spending about $2 million on the renovation, and it led to also the contractor, which was a big component of it, because unlike other real estate projects that you and I have both done, neither of us could be the sort of GC of the project, because this was a big renovation project in the heart of a city, a lot of issues with labor, unions, whatever. And that's essentially where the money came from. So that led to, if I recall, a couple meetings with his group of investors, all great people, including some institutional investors that are a part of some future deals that we're working on now. And the deal got done May of 2023.
Yeah, right before Memorial Day weekend.
That's right. May of 2023, we closed on the property. We bought Society Hill Hotel for $2.3 million, $300,000 down from other people. So we Brian and Mike came out of pocket $0 at the time of closing, and we ended up owning the majority of this asset. So over 50% controlling interest of this hotel, a boutique hotel, in literally, as we've heard the word now used by hospitality professionals, urban core. Mm-hmm. Like urban core of one of the major cities in the United States, we owned a hotel in, and we did it with other people's money. And then the hard work actually began, and we renovated it. But I think that's probably for another podcast.
Probably. But I think this is the inception of this and figuring out how all these pieces fit together was the first part of our journey, that in the first part of the chapter that we're in right now.
Yeah, it's early innings now still. I feel like we both have a lot going on, and I think that's why I'm excited about overarching this podcast. It's like it's going to be not only talking about things like that and the journey that we've already been on, but some of the decisions that we're actually still making right now. Like there's so many things. I mean, we can actually use this as an opportunity to make some decisions as well. But
for sure,
I think that's the pod.
I think that's it.